DeadCentre, Day 3. Thanks for that, I told Ed, as soon as my hands stopped shaking. The elevator was moving slowly, lurching upwards and jerking spurts of vertigo-inducing spasms. A greasy red smear of blood made a straight line from my feet to the closed gates. "Don't mention it," he replied. His makeshift spear sat against his shoulder, ready to spring forward and skewer any undead that lumbered in when they reached their destination. I needed a weapon with some reach, so I made a mental note to get one or make one, provided I survived long enough. The elevator stopped with a final jerk, like the death throes of an old and powerful animal. Ding! I took a breath before I pulled the inner gate open, then steeled myself for the next one. I had learned my lesson. I pulled the outer gate open a crack, just enough to fit my phone through. My hands shook as I slid my mobile through and took a photo, tapped the flip camera button, and took another the opposite way. Both photos were of a nondescript industrial hallways, grey walls, grey floor, grey ceiling. The only break in the monotony was brown and copper pipes running the length overhead. No one dead, however. "Daisy, we are in the service elevator. Where do we go from here?" I asked, my voice far too loud in the tiny, cramped box. "Head right out of the elevator. It's the first door at the end of the hallway. Be careful," Daisy replied. I wondered how many other pockets of survivors were scattered around the mall. Suddenly thrust into a world where they were no longer top of the food chain, the cat became the mouse, forced to hide in the shadows and live off scraps. I grabbed the outer gate handle and hauled it open, trying to make as little noise as possible. Stepping out into the hallway, I looked both ways like crossing the road. No one dead. We crept down the passage. A silence reigned between us. The door came into view after a short walk. Fortunately, it wasn't locked. I shouldered it open, hammer ready to strike out. The stairwell was empty. The lights went out. I froze up as my sight was robbed from me, fear clawing its way into parts of me that I'd never felt before. "You okay, Ed?" I whispered into the void. "Yeah, you?" His deep voice came from behind me. "Just about. Pretty certain I've shit myself, though." I whispered back. He chuckled quietly. The humor helped bring me to my senses, and I remembered I still had my phone. I flipped the torch on, and the stairwell reappeared, cast in a ghostly glow. Beginning my ascent, I took it one step at a time. The door was sat 2 flights up, and it was a pressure bar system. Thank God for health and safety laws. Which was an intensely strange thought that I might live through the apocalypse simply because years ago several people perished in a nightclub fire. The door opened with a groan of protest, the dim light of night creeping in as the opening widened. Fresh, cold night air replaced the damp, stale scent that was in my nose as I stepped out onto the roof. It was clear of undead unless they were hiding behind the occasional air conditioning unit that lit at the roof. I moved further into the middle of the roof and looked north. That high up I could see across the river to the biggest city in the northeast, Newcastle. It was burning. Fires painted bright burned into the obsidian landscape of the city as fireflies in the form of street lamps danced and flickered. The end of the world was beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. "Well, fuck," Ed said next to me. I never liked the city, not that it did anything wrong. It had rich, deep architecture, a vibrant nightlife, and all the other bullshit things that people said to describe cities. To me, it was too noisy and too busy. Yet still I felt my heart grow heavy seeing it burn. I turned away and got back to the task at hand. The pharmacy was at the opposite end of the mall towards the south. The roof was all different levels with a white-grey gangway spiderwebbing its way across. I spotted my first destination on the same level, a stretch of peak-framed glass windows that let light into the centre. From there I'd be able to see into the mall and assess how bad the situation was. Me and Ed crept along the gangways towards it. A growing sense of dread knotted its way into my stomach. We reached the windows and I peeked into the shopping mall. Emergency lighting had come on through the backup generators, so it was less lit than usual. But even in that dim light, I could see a writhing mass of undead. A horde of some 50 bodies tightly packed together. It made my blood run cold. Occasional stragglers ambled around on the first floor above that. I knew after seeing that there was no way to secure the entire shopping centre. Jesus Christ, I whispered. Let's keep going. We need to get back as quick as possible. Ed spoke reason next to me. I nodded and tore my eyes away from the hellish scene below. We had to climb a ladder to drop down to the next level. It was a straight shot to the other side and another ladder. "Hello?" A girl's voice called out into the darkness. We stopped still. There's a dichotomy of reaction to other survivors that you don't truly appreciate until you are faced with it. On the one hand, the lizard brain believes in strength in numbers. On the other hand, the rational side knows that every new person is a potential threat. Friends stay friends as long as the food doesn't run out. When it does, suddenly we remember that we're all made of meat. "Who's there?" I called to the darkness. "My name's Taylor, and I'm with my friend Becky." It called back, although I could hear her friend shushing her. 2 girls, one smart, one not so smart. "I'm Sam. My friend's name is Ed." I paused. "You guys hurt?" "Becky cut her leg pretty bad getting up here," Taylor called back. "What are you guys doing up here?" I asked. We'd moved closer now, and I was pretty sure they were hiding behind one of the aircon units. "We were smoking outside when it all kicked off. We climbed up here because it seemed safe." I stepped into their line of sight with my hands raised. I'd stuffed my hammer into my belt loop. Both girls were still in their uniform. They worked for a cafe that was pretty close by. Becky's jeans had a sizable cut along the calf, and even in the dead of night, I could see it had bled pretty bad. "We're heading to the pharmacy to get some antibiotics, but we've barricaded a shop that's pretty safe. Do you guys want to head back with us?" I told the pair. They were young. I'd guess they were still in uni. Becky was short and blonde, and Taylor was a tall brunette. Opposites attract, I guess. "Yeah, if it's safe," Taylor spoke. Her voice was deeper than her friend's, but that wasn't hard. "It is. Do you guys want to wait here, and we'll grab you on the way back?" I asked, not eager for 2 unarmed teenagers to tag along on what was already going to be a tough trip. "I don't—" "Sure," Taylor cut off her friend, understanding the risk involved. I nodded. Reaching into my pack, I got out of a bottle of water I'd taken from the pallet in the elevator. I passed it to the girls, and they started to drink immediately. "We'll be quick, like half an hour," I told them, and then me and Ed started climbing the ladder opposite. Once we were on the other side and heading to the stairs that would lead us into the mall again, Ed spoke up. "Good choice making them wait there," he said. "Yeah, I didn't think it would make it any easier with them tagging along," I replied. "No, more likely to get one of us killed," I nodded, then pulled the door open to the stairwell. There was no lights on inside, so I got my phone out again and turned the torch on, then whipped the radio out. "Daisy, we are on the other side. How do I get from the stairwell to the pharmacy?" I asked. It took a while before a response came through, and the silence mixed with the lack of illumination chilled my bones with fear. I kept imagining a figure lunging out of the darkness. "Which stairwell are you in?" Daisy replied, her voice crackling a little. "How the fuck would I know?" "How do I find that out?" I asked. "There should be a letter painted on the wall," she told me, like I was the fucking idiot in this equation. I scanned my phone around and found a D painted on the wall in faded white paint. "Stairwell D, I think," I told her, my voice echoed in the open space. "You'll need to follow the stairwell down 2 flights. Then take a left, and it'll be the first door on your right. But... She trailed off. But, I prompted. The back door is unlikely to be open, so you'll have to force it open or enter via the customer entrance in the mall. Fuck. How do I get to the mall if it's not open? I asked. It would take a crowbar and a lot of noise to get through the door if it was shut and locked. Instead of heading left, head straight on, Daisy replied. Thanks. Stay safe. So that left me in between a rock and a hard place. My best course of action was to try the back door and hope to get lucky, then go through the front if not. Not wishing to waste time, I headed down the stairs and took a left. My phone produced just enough light to let me see about 8 feet in front of me, so I almost missed the door. It wasn't open, which was par for the course. I tried the handle. Locked. I don't know why I expected anything different. Me and Ed turned around and headed back the way we came, a mounting dread building in the pit of my stomach with each step. You hold the door and stop it from closing. I'll run in and grab what we need, I told Ed when we ended up in front of the big double doors leading into the mall. Do you know what we're looking for? He asked. Anything ending with Cillin? I replied. He nodded. On 3? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. I counted down as he opened the door. I slipped past and into the mall. The pharmacy was on the first shop on my immediate right. Now I feel like I should clarify that the pharmacy was a small part within a larger shop that sold pretty much all medical and cosmetic stuff you could ask for, and it was on the far end of the shop. In the low light of the mall I could see figures ambling around, but by some miracle none of them were close by. I darted into the shop and began weaving through the aisles, half crouching. I almost tripped on something and grabbed a shelf for support. I shone my torch on it. It was a body, missing flesh from the waist down, red tibias sticking out of worn boots. Bile tickled the back of my throat as I stepped over it. I kept my head down and somehow made it to the pharmacy without running into any undead. Just normal, dead. I pulled open the door and snuck in, closing it behind me. Inside had 3 carousels of medication with boxes stacked to the heavens. A figure in a white lab coat lumbered out from behind one of them. I didn't think. I lunged forward, grabbing its collar from behind and struck it in the head with my hammer. It went limp, and its dead weight ripped the collar out of my grasp. Adrenaline pumping in my veins, I went row by row of medication and threw anything that ended in Cillin into my backpack. I grabbed a few boxes of stronger painkillers too, codeine mainly. My mother had been prescribed that towards the end of her illness. I grabbed anything I thought could be useful, already sure that I'd regret not picking something else later on. I swung my pack over my shoulder and retraced my steps out of the shop. Something lunged at me from one of the aisles. I pushed it away as hard as I could and it fell backwards into a display with a deafening crash as products began sliding to the floor. I booked it. Certain. A growing horde was hot on my heels. I sprinted out as fast as I could. Ed held the door open, concern plain on his face. A body crumpled at his feet with a knife wound leaking blood. I practically pushed him inside and pulled the door closed behind me. You good? He asked. I couldn't respond. I was too busy breathing like a set of blacksmith's bellows. Fine. I'm fine. Got what we needed. I pushed out between breaths. Great, let's get back, he told me. Then we went back the way we came, picking up the girls on the way back. When we got to the elevator, I radioed Daisy to let her know we were still alive, and we filled our bags with as much water as we could carry. Finally, we reached the back door of the shop, and I knocked 5 times. Jackie opened the door slowly. You look like shit. Thanks, Jackie, I replied as we shuffled inside. I let Ed introduce the girls to everyone else as I took the medication to Grace. Her condition was no better, but Hazel quickly gave her some of the antibiotics as I slid into a chair beside her. The events of the past few hours caught up with me, and my body hurt in ways I didn't know was possible. I fell asleep, holding her hand after a while. That is the end of DeadCentre, Day 3. Thank you for listening, and if you want to catch next week's episode, be sure to subscribe.